Hey everybody, Wisnefske here, broker owner of Land Legacy Group, and I want to thank you for checking out this video on my channel. And today we're going to talk about the pros and cons of owning land in Wisconsin. Now this could be if you're a local owner or you live out of state and you own land here, or maybe you own land that's about 2 or 3 hours away. We're going to touch on all of that. First, I want to obviously thank you for checking this out, but be sure to check out my other videos and subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can get alerted every time that I post a new video. And so let's dive right into those pros and cons of owning land in Wisconsin. The first pro that I can think of is you are owning a really cool piece of real estate. Wisconsin has a lot to offer, and there are diverse areas throughout the whole state. Now, way up north, you're going to run into the big Northwoods, which can be a big tourist destination, especially in the winter. And also, when you go to the southwest part of the state, you get to run into some more rolling ridges, the driftless area, big farms, big pieces of timber, a nice diverse landscape out there. And then when you get to where I live, which is the southeast region, you get also some ridges, you get some lowland swamps, you get some more developed areas that also has a mix of some less developed areas, so larger lots. You do run into more subdivisions, but you can also run into places that have about a 5-acre minimum. So you kind of get a mix of the developed and the undeveloped all at the same time. Another pro that I like to think of is the property tax bracket that agricultural land gets put into. We have what's called a use value assessment, and agricultural land is usually, but I'm going to say almost all the time, the lowest assessed class for property. What that means is if you have agricultural land, that'll be assessed on a very, very low basis, which means your property taxes are super low as well. I've seen somebody that owns anywhere from 50 to 100 acres, and their tax bill is about $100 or $150 per year. Now, that obviously has to be talked with for the assessor to get that number. You obviously see it on the tax bill, but that can change a little bit. But that is a huge tax break for somebody that owns land here, because if you have agricultural land, you're leasing that out unless you want to farm it yourself. And let's say you have 100 acres and you're making $150 an acre. That 100 acres basically generates $15,000 a year, and your tax bill is going to be super, super low. So you have your insurance and your taxes that'll most likely be covered more than enough with that income, and the rest is just profit for you to take as income on a yearly basis. So it's a super, super great pro that way as well. What I like about those, especially the southern Wisconsin market, as the last pro that I'll talk about, is just the amount of development that's going on. Some of it is scattered, which makes it kind of difficult to predict which markets are kind of up and coming. Like one market that's very, very strong is Waukesha County, because they have very high income, very good land values, and a very scarce amount of land, especially in the northeast part of that county. And there's a lot of subdivisions that are going in that area. So if you own land on kind of those outskirts of that county or of those subdivisions, your land values are really, really starting to increase. And so anybody that's bought land in the last 10 to 15, maybe more, 20 years or so, are really starting to cash out those properties. And so there's a good appreciation factor in this southeast region, probably more so than any other region. You could throw in South Central around the Madison market. I'm sure there's some up north, but this southeast, South Central market are really where everything is really starting to see that appreciation factor multiply. And so when you factor that in, appreciation plus the cash flow that you can get from leasing out farmland, it makes it a really good investment for here. You just have to be willing to wait for that appreciation and take advantage of all of that. So the cons, there are some cons to owning land here. One of them is that high barrier to entry where the prices are very, very high. And so the average investor probably doesn't have much of an opportunity to own land here. Now, if you're okay with not having super high appreciation and you just want to own land, you can look into the northern part of the state, sometimes in the southwest as well, and take advantage of what that land has to offer there. Barriers to entry, if you want maybe a 40-acre piece, you should be able to scoop that up anywhere between $200,000 and $300,000. Now, once you start getting over to 100, 200 acres, even 80 acres where I live, you better have about $800,000 to $1 million ready to go to buy that piece of land. Now, those areas with high barrier of entry are going to have a lot higher upside, I would say. But if you can get something northern southwest for $200,000-$300,000 and you own it for 10 to 15 years, you should see some appreciation with that. If you go super far up north, land you can kind of buy for anywhere from $500 to $1,500 an acre, but just keep in mind it's priced low for a reason, because that area is not seeing this huge influx of development and appreciation. So you kind of you do get what you pay for. The other con that I can think of outside of the barrier to entry is some of these zoning laws. When you get around big metro areas, you start to get more restrictive zoning. And so what that does is, if you're buying a property, let's say you buy 40 acres of farmland and the township is like, we want this to stay farmland basically forever until maybe we redo our zoning in 15, 20, 30 years. That's good from conserving farmland standpoint. It's bad from the appreciation standpoint, because everybody knows that that piece of land most likely will always remain farmland. Again, good for conserving farmland, bad for an investment. Now, if you can find areas like outside of there that have properties that are zoned agricultural, but their future land use maps show that as maybe being rural residential, so maybe it's going to be 5-acre lots or something like that, or a subdivision, that is where you get your appreciation on that future land use. So that's where you can really cash out a property. The only problem with that, and that's why this is a con, is those are hard to find. You have to dig super deep. Developers and investors are seeking out those opportunities all the time, and they have cash to play with. The average person does not have that. And so you need to do your homework, and you make sure that you don't buy something that's going to be super restrictive on the zoning, because that's only going to put you in a bad situation. The last con that I can think of is just kind of the topography that Wisconsin has. Now, when you get out to the southwestern part of the state, you're dealing with very steep hillsides, which can be very hard to develop. Where I'm from in the southeastern part of the state, you do get a lot of properties that are flat. Some of them will have hills, yes, but for the most part, they're flat. Where you run into problems are the wetlands that can be found throughout this part of the state. Although very high value for environmental factors, for developing and owning, they do create some issues. They're more often than not the lowest priced value for a property, just because of the limited use. Nobody wants to go sink a four-wheeler in 4 feet of muck. They also come with certain protections from the Wisconsin DNR. They're regulated federally with the government and all their ordinances and stuff. And so, for example, if you own a 10-acre piece, and we had to do this is a real-life example, we were taking a 10-acre piece off of a 34-acre farm, and it was in a village, and before they would let us divide that, we had to have a wetland delineation done that showed those exact locations of the wetlands, and there's certain setbacks that people have to be just to build a house. So you look at a property like 10 acres, should be very simple. The front half was farm field, the lower half was all wetlands, and the village made us do a wetland delineation. Now that might sound like, okay, not a big deal, but there's a cost involved. We're lucky enough where we get that service for free. However, when something's free, there's usually strings attached, right? You join a very long wait list, and those can only be done during the growing season, so you have a very short window. If you wanted to do that with a private consultant company that does wetland delineations and stuff like that, I would budget at least $5,000 for that. And that's not going to include a survey or anything like that. A survey can run anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500. So there's certain costs if somebody's looking to develop properties that have that, and it could be as simple like we were going through to build one house. So that land division ended up costing about $10,000. Now the property sold for a great amount of money, which made everything worth it. And that just had to do with the location. But to get there it took about 6 months and about $10,000. So the con of it, in summary, is just when you're looking to develop or use land, you need to do your homework on that. And Wisconsin has a lot to look at, especially from the environmental thing. You got steep hillsides, you can have lowlands, any creeks or anything like that need to be looked at a lot. It adds, that could also be a con because it adds really, really cool features to the property, but you just got to be careful not to interrupt those and make sure you talk to the right people from the environmental side, that you're not doing something you're not supposed to. That can give you a lot of headaches and a lot of fees, a lot of fines that you shouldn't have to pay for. So I got 3 pros, 3 cons of owning land in Wisconsin. Hope you found that super helpful. If you have any questions or want to dive deeper in any of those, please reach out to me. Leave a comment below. Send me an email, al@landandlegacygroup.com, and I would love to talk to you.